I'm going to hit record one more time, and that way we know for certain. Yeah. Okay, I think we're in good shape now. Did everyone get an alert that the recording is on? Okay, very good. All right. Well, let's hold for just maybe one more minute,
Okay.
everyone. We have 16 that registered, and hopefully folks are just grabbing a bite for lunch and coming on in. Um, give it just a few more minutes here, but thank you all for joining today. We're glad to have you.
And feel free to put your name and affiliation in the chat um, for today's session. Thank you.
Yes, let's do that. Okay. Susanna, it's good to see you again. Glad you could join us today. All right. So I've got 4 after the hour. I think we'll just jump on in. Does that sound okay? Definitely want to be
Sure.
mindful of everyone's time. So, everyone, again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Gay Humphrey, and I have the wonderful pleasure of leading the Hawaii Arts Alliance. And this is the fourth session, our final session in our series on advocacy and the arts. These sessions have been about just helping to amplify our collective voice as an arts and culture community here in Hawaii. So whether you are joining for the first time or you've been with us throughout, we're really glad to have you with us as we wrap up today. So our session is entitled Turning Insight into Impact. And we're hoping that with today's topic, we'll be able to put some of what we've been learning into practice. Our goal is to answer questions, maybe even participate in a little exercise at the end to help surface some advocacy issues and strategies that will be helpful to us. We're very delighted to have Cynthia Chen with us with Creative West. And Cynthia, we're going to introduce you a little bit in more formally in just a little bit, but so glad to have you with us today. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce Lisa Maruyama, who is a nonprofit strategist here in Hawaii. Lisa has been serving as our facilitator throughout the 4 sessions, and we're glad to have Lisa back with us today. A quick note, I think everyone is aware that we're recording the session and we will post this as well as the prior 3 sessions to our website. If you're not already on our mailing list, we hope that you'll join. We'll be sending out a link to all 4 sessions in our upcoming November newsletter. So if you haven't, if you're not on our mailing list, please, please let us know. We'd love to add you to that list. So once again, mahalo for being here. And with that, Lisa, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Great. Thank you, Gay. Aloha, everyone. Um, Thanks for the tee up, Gay. I'd love to introduce to you Cynthia Chen, manager of public policy and advocacy for Creative West. Cynthia was also an alumna of Creative West's Emerging Leaders of Color program, but she's now managing public policy and advocacy programs and services. Creative West's AAP division leads the organization's efforts to strengthen advocacy for the arts at local, state, and national levels, and it supports state arts agencies across 13 states in the West, and it connects and mobilizes a Western network of artists, administrators, public officials, and influencers within and outside the arts field to build awareness of arts-related issues to drive legislation and policy. She's a versatile arts and cultural professional with diverse experiences in the sector from local to international levels. My goodness, she's trilingual in English, French, and Mandarin. She helped with the production of cultural projects in the United States, France, China, and Taiwan for institutions such as, oh, I'm going to butcher some of this, but Centre Pompidou and Musée d'Orsay. She was raised in Salt Lake City, and she began her career working as a legislative fellow for the Utah Cultural Alliance and at the nationally recognized youth media arts nonprofit Skyhop Productions. Most recently, she was part of the team that developed Creative Washington, growing and strengthening the creative economy, a statewide strategic plan for the Washington State Department of Commerce. Chen graduated from the University of Utah, where she majored in flute performance and minored in political science. She holds a master's degree in public policy with the distinction of summa cum laude from Sciences Po Paris. Um, I am just really impressed that we have people that have come our way in this series that are really deeply knowledgeable about the arts. They're not just sort of lobbying on our behalf, but they really truly understand what makes the creative economy work, what makes art work, and they can actually speak from the heart when representing the issues of the arts. And so we're so delighted to welcome Cynthia today to spend time with us. We thought that since she's really got her eye toward what's going on in Congress, she could give us some updates from where she sits at Creative West. So, welcome, Cynthia. Thanks for taking some time with us today.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Gay, for the invitation. Hello, everybody. My name is Cynthia Chen with Creative West. And actually, I was just catching up with Gay and Lisa before the call, really quick to let them know that our Deputy Director, David Holland, has moved on from Creative West for a new job. And so I actually am the incoming Director for Public Policy and Government Affairs starting on Monday. So it's been a little busy on my end with the transition. But when Gay invited me, I thought it was really important to come do the session. A big part of our department's work is to make sure that on the ground advocates and stakeholders are informed with what's going on. Not only that our organization is tracking, but you all on the ground know what's happening as well in all different levels of government. And so I've had the pleasure of working with Gay for, I can't remember how long. How long have you been in your role, Gay? Since she's been at the Arts Alliance. Yeah.
Yes, Cynthia, about a year and a half.
Yeah. And the Arts Alliance is part of a network that we run at Creative West called the Western Arts Advocacy Network, which is a network of statewide arts advocacy organizations across our region. And Gay has been active in that. And so that network is essential as part of our advocacy strategy to connect folks who are active doing the grassroots work at the state level to what's going on federally as well. So in that network, we have all the kind of equivalent arts alliances of the 13 states that we serve in the West. And also I wanted to call out that Creative West, as of I think 3 years ago, formally launched our services as well into the Pacific territories of Guam, CNMI, and American Samoa. And so we're building out our services as well. And Creative West isn't just an advocacy organization. We also do grant making and support arts administration through software products. We have a few software service products that are run as businesses, but then feed back into our nonprofit grant making and advocacy work. So it's kind of a virtuous cycle as well. So I don't know if anyone's been in the field and is familiar with Call for Entry or Go Smart or Zap for festivals. So that's also Creative West as well. So we're an interesting group. We have a large geographic service region, as well as a wide mandate. So, but I'm wearing my advocacy, public policy, and government affairs hat today with you all to inform you about what's going on. And I thought maybe we'd just start with some what's going on federally, and then I can answer questions. We're not a huge group today, so if you have questions, feel free to jump in. So I thought we would start with kind of the obvious elephant in the room. We're in, I think, the second longest government shutdown in American history, last I checked. And so kind of what that means right now is that there's not really been new news on the National Endowment for the Arts or National Endowment for the Humanities or Institute of Museum and Library Services since October 1st, because that's when the shutdown started. And then if we're tracking in terms of, but I will say, actually, let me backtrack. So Creative West has the privilege of being involved in several coalitions that operate federally. One of which is called the Cultural Advocacy Group. It's a coalition of national art service organizations that are involved in federal policy, and it's a way for folks to get information. This group did have the privilege of hearing from senior advisor to the National Endowment for the Arts, Marianne Carter, recently, just about a week and a half ago, in which she was able to give a kind of general status update of where the National Endowment for the Arts is currently during this shutdown. She informed us that the agency, relative to some of the other cultural agencies, such as the Humanities NEH or IMLS, is in better shape. Right now, it's getting tricky to track what's happening federally, because what's going on with the administration is that the management of the federal cultural agencies, I'll say, group them together like that, is that it's kind of becoming, each is starting to get follow their own path, if you will. And so we had the privilege of hearing from the acting head of the NEA to let us know that how the NEA is being run, but we have not heard equivalent news from the NEH acting chair or the IMLS. But from what we've heard from museum partners and humanities partners, it seems like of the three agencies, the NEA is in the best shape. Currently, even in the shutdown, Marianne Carter has been able to use what's called carryover funding to continue the operations of the agencies, the NEA, even though the government is shut down outwardly. So using funds from the previous fiscal year to continue to staff the agency and to issue payouts for grants. So that's what we've heard. This is better. This is what we've heard is in better shape than some of the other agencies on the humanities and museum side. So that's kind of what we're hearing in terms of the shutdown side. And then in terms of, I'll break out the update into what's happening for the upcoming FY26 appropriation cycle. So this is the budgeting for next year. So clearly there's not anything going on in Congress movement right now regarding that. The last updates that we have in terms of the future funding for the agencies is that this past summer, the subcommittee that is in charge of the appropriation for the NEA and the NEH on the House side proposed $135 million for the agency, which is about a 25% cut from level funding. But the Senate subcommittee came back with $207 million for both the NEA and NEH, which is level funding. And that's kind of where we are right now, is that the House and Senate have these two different numbers for next year's funding. And since the business is not really, well, the legislature, Congress is in trying to reopen the government. I don't think they're really focused on doing the NEA NEH appropriation at this moment in time. The big debate right now is SNAP benefits and healthcare. So that's where we are right now. We're kind of in a holding pattern. But before the shutdown started, we had heard from sources in Washington that there's likely a chance that when it comes to this specific appropriation for the NEA and the NEH, that the House, when it comes time to reconcile the two sides, the House would move up and meet the Senate. So there's hope that there might be level funding for the next year, but we are waiting to see what happens with the macro debate vis-a-vis the shutdown. So that's kind of the shutdown. We've looked at the funding for next year. And then I think one of the big updates for, well, not updates, but another big topic regarding federal arts and culture a lot of people have been talking about is in the spring when there were letters issued out for revocation of funds, rescissions for funds for FY25. And so in that briefing that Marianne Carter gave to the Cultural Advocacy Group, she mentioned that the NEA in the spring and summer went through an appeals process. So there was a large amount of letters that went out. I don't know if anyone in your community was affected that had funding taken back in FY25. There was an appeals process where folks who had their funding withdrawn were supposed to submit an appeal. And then at this most recent October update that Marianne Carter gave, she said that the agency went through their appeals process over the summer and considered all of the appeals that were submitted. And they have closed out that appeal process, and anyone who had funding restored should have been notified already. So I don't know if anyone in Hawaii submitted appeals for grants from the NEA that were withdrawn. If you haven't heard back, we've heard word from the agency head herself that they've closed out that process. So that's what I've heard from that side. And she mentioned a kind of ballpark number. They restored around 100 grants, but I don't know out of how many were withdrawn because there was never really a formal process that like with a big list of like the number of grants that were canceled. I know that our federal partners at Americans for the Arts had submitted something called a FOIA request to try to get a full list. And now that the appeals process has been opened, closed, and reviewed, I think now would be a good time for a federal coalition to go back to the agency to see if there will ever be a fully published list of the number of grants that were withdrawn. So that's on the kind of grant withdrawal side. All right, so we've covered, I'm like, there's a lot to cover. We've covered shutdown, we've covered FY26, FY25. Let's see, and then I'm going to move on to executive orders because that's like another big one, and compliance. So there's a lot going on, and I think the best way I've tried to wrap my mind around this is to follow kind of even larger coalitions and tapping into, I know that there's a very active national coalitions for nonprofits. There's one, I don't know if anyone here is plugged in with the National Council of Nonprofits, but they've published a lot of guidance in terms of how to deal with executive orders. And I'll be sure to drop a link in the chat how to prepare for that. And in a bunch of coalition meetings that I've sat in on, unfortunately, what I've heard is like the baseline conclusion is it's a bit every man for themselves. There's kind of these like general guidelines that these national associations like the National Council of Nonprofits will offer, but a lot of the times folks who are leading their own nonprofits or organizations know best like what amount of risk that they can handle when it comes to what kind of work that they want to publish or like what kind of issue that they want to stand up for. That's an assessment that each individual organization needs to take. And I've been on several coalition calls, and I feel like a lot of the like big takeaway is internally each org needs to do their own risk assessment to figure out what that line is for them. To support that kind of work, because a lot of the times that kind of work takes legal expertise. I've heard about this network called We the Action, which is a broad nonprofit legal defense network to try to connect folks who might not necessarily have in-house legal counsel, to try to connect folks case by case basis to get support to do that kind of work. I have not had anecdotal like evidence, or I've not worked with anyone directly with this network, but so I can't say like vouch like, oh, you can easily get your case supported, but at least it's good to know that there are networks of lawyers out there who are trying to organize to connect organizations with legal experts one-on-one in case you don't have access to that. Another legal network that we've been trying to connect arts folks with in particular, I'm not sure if Hawaii has one, but a lot of states have what's called a Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts organization. Typically, those organizations have been more on the kind of how to incorporate your organization to a 501c3, how to like protect yourself from copyright infringement, those kind of issues, and less so on First Amendment rights, which is a bit more what's happening with the executive orders. But I've heard from some grassroots works that there are various VLAs, as we call them, across the states are trying to connect with each other to see if they can train themselves a bit more to be helpful in potentially First Amendment issues. So I'll drop a few links in the chat after that. Oh, I see that I'm at time, so I'll pause there if there's any questions. I didn't get to kind of the federal state connections in terms of like how this might impact the state foundation, but I'm also happy to do a little bit on that as well.
Yes, please. Actually, Cynthia, please do go ahead and take the time to share that out. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to rush you with a time
Yeah.
constraint. We're quick, we're very open, and this is important information. So please proceed. And I've put your links in the chat, so don't worry about that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. That's so helpful. Okay. So, in terms of just like kind of wrap up a little bit about potential implications with the state foundation is that how the federal funding flows down to the states is that the NEA has their direct project grants that organizations can apply directly to the NEA, but then actually 40% of the NEA budget goes out into the state arts councils, of which Hawaii's is the state foundation. And so how the money flows is that once a state arts council has accepted those funds, they are also then agreeing to abide to federal grant making rules and compliance, which means that any pass-through funds that went from the NEA down to the state foundation, if the state foundation regrants out those monies, they will also have to comply with these executive orders. And so that is something that people like we're trying to flag to the field. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky about every organization who's applying for these funds will need to do their own internal assessment about risk management in terms of like, am I in compliance with these terms and conditions, et cetera, et cetera. So as far as I know, from what I'm hearing in the field, so every state in the country has a state arts council. Almost all states have accepted their state arts councils have accepted their NEA pass-through money, with the only exception of New York, who has decided to not take those funds and have their arts council completely funded by the state legislature, which is every state has a different amount of percentage. I think, for example, in our region, I think Idaho's like a state that we work with, their state arts council is 50% funded federally, 50% legislative state legislature money. So if they had decided not to take their money, they would be almost non-functional. Whereas New York's, I think, is only like 2%. So they have like the flexibility whether or not to do that. So that just is depending on how each state arts council is funded. I'll pause there because I'm like, I could get into that really deep, but I'll stop there. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. You covered a myriad of issues very quickly. And so, are there any questions from the group for Cynthia? We have a wonderful, important resource here. Please take advantage of her expertise and her knowledge, as well as her unique perspective of sort of many states, right? Activities in many states. Any questions for Cynthia?
Lisa, I'll toss out one.
Sure.
Cynthia, given that you have sort of an interesting position where you're sitting, is there anything that you can offer that would help us to that would help us best engage in this moment? What can states like Hawaii and the others that you serve in the West, what are you seeing in terms of states that are engaging and doing some really good work right now? How can we best advocate? We certainly have local things that are going to be important, but how can we also make sure our voices are being heard with what's happening on the national scene?
I think that's a great question, Yay. And I think in this moment in time in particular, I know you invited me to talk about federal, and there is a lot going on federally, but actually, I think given the kind of like noise and the scale at which things are happening, it's, I think, the better productive use of time to focus on what's happening locally at the state level. And at Creative West, we support local state advocacy work and have for the last 20 years. through the support of groups like Hawaii Arts Alliance and all the state, we actually fund the state advocacy organizations across the region. And in doing that, we meet regularly with our local partners, and every year we do a report on what's happening in the region at the state level. So we're not looking at the NEA funding, we're actually looking at what's being talked about in the state legislatures. And this year, from the most recent legislative sessions, we know that there was a lot going on in Hawaii, but there are also similarly a lot of things going on at state legislative houses across the region. And kind of based off of the reports that we got back from our partners in the field, like Hawaii Arts Alliance, we're hearing that we've seen that actually in every single state in 10 out of 13 states, there were threats to reduce the state arts agency funding. And that's from the state legislatures, legislators, sorry. But actually, the positive news is while there were these direct threats because of active local engagement, there were some hits. There were like places in Hawaii, I know you all had some kind of like regulatory like issues, and then there was a risk to the public work fund. And we had similar things in Montana as well, where there was because of regulations or like the way that those the changes were being implemented, there was a loss of access to funds, but the core corpus of the funds was protected through advocacy work from local folks who showed up to those state council meetings, because those state legislators are still more accessible than some of what's going on federally. And I think that local organizing really works. So really hearing like what the conversations are in the state houses is really important, and getting ahead of those conversations is important. Another key theme that we've seen in the region is that a lot of folks nearly every single state is faced with hard budget challenges because of what's happening federally. On average, state legislatures and their budgets are across the country 30% federal dollars. So if a bunch of federal programs are getting cut, state legislators are now having to make up for that through some other way, either raising local taxes or cutting local programs. And so when state leaders are having to make those decisions, a lot of the time arts kind of comes up as a place to cut. So we've seen in this last session in FY25, many states across the region moving into a narrative of arts as the creative economy, arts in the creative economy, understanding how to make the argumentation of arts contributing to the economy. And I know that like arts is not just for economic reasons. Like we know that it's important for health, for our children, for education, for cultural expression. Like, I mean, especially in Hawaii, I think like folks know, but just given the shift in economic times, it's like sometimes it's good to make those arguments and just to follow the economic argument. And there are different ways that people talk about the economic impact of arts and culture, and that could be its own session. But I've noticed that in states like in some of our more red states in the region, they've had wins using this kind of rhetoric. In Wyoming, they started a creative economy strategic plan recently, and that seems to be working in Wyoming, which is one of the reddest states in the region. I was recently in Utah with a bunch of stakeholders in their advocacy group, and they were all very excited about this conversation as well. And of course, I don't know, it's not necessarily of course, but Utah recently lost Sundance Film Festival to Colorado. And so folks were like talking about that and figuring out how to get back their creative economy kind of film industry work. So yeah, so I just wanted to call out that seems to be like a rhetorical shift that people are using to try to change the messaging in these economically tight times.
Thank you for that. Do you have access or a link to that study, Cynthia?
Oh, the study. Okay, so this is an internal publication that we do to evaluate our funding program, but
Sure.
I don't know. We haven't made it publicly available yet, but
Okay.
I will actually, what I can do is, let's see. All right.
Or even pieces of it where there are
Yeah.
states that are actually articulating very well that connection to the creative economy. I would imagine, like you said, the red states might be doing that, or even the blue states that are trying to make those connections are attempting that. And it strikes me that we could learn a lot. We could grab some of that data for Hawaii, and it would set us up well for the 2026 legislative session.
Yeah, what I would need to do is I think I would need to get internal approval to share this out with you
Okay,
all, but I
no
might be able to
worries.
do that and share the link.
Yeah, or just some
Gay,
examples, statements, data, just some examples that could help us understand how we might articulate that for ourselves here in Hawaii.
yeah, I think this one I can share out probably publicly. This is just a snapshot from the larger report. This is kind of a key successes and challenges by state, organized by state, across the ones that
Oh,
we serve.
wow. Oh,
So
wow. This is so super
um,
helpful.
yeah, it's specific to the FY25 legislative session, though. So each state has a different kind of playing field
Sure,
that we're
sure.
looking at. Yeah, yeah.
Right. But even these ideas of works of art, or excuse me, a creative economy working group in California is very interesting.
Oh, yes,
Um,
and they just published their statewide strategic plan for
okay.
the creative economy. And Creative West, we worked on Washington's statewide creative economy
Yeah.
strategic plan, which is the one that was mentioned in my bio.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right, 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 right. Gay, do you have access to those or the Washington State, or can we get that from you, Cynthia?
Yeah, yeah.
If that's
I can send a
public?
follow-up email, and once
Okay,
I have it in my emails with the California's plan and Washington's
Washington's
plan.
strategic plan would be great.
That
Mhm.
would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
She'll share with me. I'll be happy to get this out to everyone. Those would be great resources to take a look at. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Has Gay's question of Cynthia stimulated any other questions from the rest of you by chance?
Hmm.
Even around strategies or tactics, tools. We have here someone who thinks every day about advocacy in the arts. It's her job. So,
Yeah.
what a great resource. Okay, well, if there are no questions, Cynthia, you're welcome to stay and listen in on the second half of the conversation for this session. We're going to pivot to just what we had said we would discuss at this session. After Cynthia's federal and state update, we wanted to
I
use
have
a little. Oh, yeah,
one more
absolutely.
thought to like kind of wrap us up.
Absolutely.
Actually, I love tracking what's happening in Hawaii. Actually, I don't know if you all know, but your state legislators are very interested and active in kind of legislation around arts and culture. And I don't know if it's because of the vibrant cultural scene in Hawaii or what, but I'll also share another report that's helpful. There's a group called the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies that tracks different legislative activity across
Oh,
the country at the state level. And like I've read this report many years, and every year Hawaii's state legislators are always kind of proposing new ideas for either like classifying performing arts as public artwork, or and this is not common across the
oh,
states. And Hawaii's legislators are quite interested and I think receptive to the idea of policy making around arts and culture. And so I would like encourage you all to like tap into that and like try to understand like what they're interested in as well. So like I find Hawaii to be a really interesting state, like comparatively across the region. Yeah.
do you have a sense of this is might be a big ask of you, but since you sit at such a interesting intermediary kind of umbrella level, you have a unique sense of the landscape. for the states that actually have ardent arts advocates in the legislature, do you see a correlation with greater funding? I mean, that is not the case here in Hawaii, where we have creative and thoughtful public policy that might be happening, but it doesn't necessarily translate to more money. And so just trying to understand those correlations across states, if you have a sense of that.
That's actually a fascinating question because if we're looking at per capita funding for states, like surprisingly, like Utah ranks like highest, or not
Yeah,
highest, but like one of the highest across the states in the region that we're tracking. And so I don't know if any of you are familiar with the politics of Utah, but it's not known to be like the bluest of blue, or like, I mean,
right.
but it doesn't mean that there aren't art supporters out there. And I think that's also a lot of it's like a historical thing. Like Utah, the state of Utah, the first state arts council in the whole country, is 125 years old. So I think there's like a cultural, like there's been a
Mhm.
historical cultural support.
Legacy,
Yeah, legacy support. So
sure.
um, yeah, it's an interesting question, and I don't know if there's a correlation, and I definitely don't think it's causal. So
Yeah, and it's there's a myriad of variables that affect, sort of art advocates and giving, right? They're not necessarily always correlative, but I would, it's sort of my intermediary brain. I used to sit at an intermediary that collected data in this way. So it's just curious to find out if there are other trends that you see across the 13 states that we could learn from here in Hawaii. So thank you so much, Cynthia. You're a
yeah,
wealth of information for us. And
yes.
yes, if you could share any other reports that are public reports, we very much welcome that. So thank you.
Yes, I will send that in an email. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Okay, so transitioning on, are there what I was beginning to say is that we just a quick review of the 4 sessions now. The first session, for those of you who have been with us for the long haul, in the first session, we talked about starting out with a plan for advocacy, whether it's within your school environment or as an individual, or if you work for an arts nonprofit, really before even showing up at the Capitol, thinking about the frameworks, the policies, the culture of your organization at the board level, at the staff level, at the school level, et cetera, to kind of get things in place to be ready to do this type of work at the federal, state, or even county levels. And so we talked a little bit about that on the first session. In the second session, you'll recall we had the public access room head, Andy, and she was so knowledgeable. She had so many interesting, she had a very robust presentation deck for us around all things legislature. And she continues, as you know, to be available for answering any questions to you all. She's at the public access room at the Capitol. But she went through a whole bunch of things around the navigating the legislature, timelines, calendar, um, testimony filing, all that kind of stuff. Very technical. And I know some of you had questions during that session, and we perhaps ran out of time if you had more questions. And then in session 3, we actually brought in a panel of storytellers, one being a reporter with Hawaii Public Radio, one being a media production person with Pop Creative Media who runs a television program, as well as online content and social media influencing. And then a third person who actually represented programmatic work at a arts nonprofit. So they were a panel made up of sharing how they tell stories of their impact, their art and their impact. And that one was really, really interesting as well. And so then this is our 4th session where we figured we should share some federal updates as well as some federal state relationship updates. And so that was what Cynthia just provided for you. What I didn't expect is that Cynthia would demonstrate for us some of these tools of advocacy that Creative West uses to storytell, to show impact, to make inferences, to have compelling talking points around the value of the arts, the data that they collect, the trends that they see across states is a powerful storytelling tool to actually share with your public officials. So to the extent that you can tap national or regional organizations like Creative West, please go ahead and do so. They have a wealth of information. So that brings us up to now, and we really wanted to give you some time because these have been very quick sessions to just ask away. And no question is stupid. Every question matters. We're all here to support each other and learn from each other, by the way. So also making the point that we are not the experts. We're all learning. We're all in the field, and we all have the different intelligences around the arts. And so this is also a time for you to share out any mana'o or any expertise you have with the rest of the group around how we might prepare or actually do this work. So I'll open the floor up for any questions. And if any of us cannot answer it in the room, we will save the question and find the right person who can answer it and get back to you. For some of you who are, I know at the legislative public access room presentation, I know there were some technical questions that you had. Are there any leftover questions there?
Lisa, while people are
Yes.
thinking about their question, maybe I could just add a reminder from that session where Andy spoke. You also had Speaker of the House, Nadine
That's
Nakamura,
right.
do kind of two things. I think she responded to a question that you posed about how do we show up as our best selves and represent our organizations. And she spoke about the importance of relationship. She spoke about the importance of preparedness, be ready for the conversation, but recognize that relationship does matter in the legislative process, and building relationship with your legislators is something she was advocating. And I think you also asked her about the question of what's on the horizon for the upcoming fiscal year. And not unlike Cynthia's comments, she mentioned that there are significant cuts given the uncertainty of the federal government and the dollars. And so safety net is really important. And that's going to be top of mind for legislators. So being mindful of that as well. And how do we then position the arts? And I think that resonates with some things Cynthia was saying, even about the creative sector and economic development. So just an add-on to your good synopsis.
A critical piece to that session too. Thank you, Janice, about what the speaker said. So given that recap, any thoughts, questions, inferences, or ideas from the group? Or even impressions thus far of the series for those of you who have been with us consistently? Beth, did you want to say something? No rush. There you go.
You could tell I was trying to find my hand to raise it.
You were looking like it, that you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, this is really out of my realm, and I would like to understand things better. So it's, for me, like I don't have any, what I feel like, or even know how to formulate a question yet. But I'm really appreciating that y'all are doing this, and it's starting to sort of give me a sense of the landscape and how it all works, even though I can't really intelligently respond to it yet. But I really, really appreciate all of this information, and I've bookmarked everything, all of these resources, and yeah, and want to go back in my own time and start to review things and the recordings as well. So thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
I'm sorry for being so quiet, but
No,
it's like I don't know what to
not
say
at
yet.
all.
But I'm learning, and it's expanding the way I think about things. So yeah, and advocacy. So thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. And if I may ask you back, Beth, this is anything is an evaluative last couple minutes of this session, because we'd like to understand where it is that we can further support you. If you had, like, what would make you dive into this process? If there was a bill that was of interest to you, whether it was of concern or something you wanted to cheerlead and support, would you feel comfortable showing up at the Capitol this coming session to actually voice your opinion?
Well, yes, I have done so,
Okay.
but in written testimony
Mm-hmm.
more than once. And so, because um, the Hawaii Arts Alliance and the State Foundation, are always alerting us
Mm-hmm.
of these things. It keeps it on the front page for me. So yeah, I feel very much compelled to participate in that process. I haven't been there in person, but I am participating and have attended Zoom, hearings and all of that sort of thing.
Great.
So yeah, I was in, I've been feeling really strongly how I would love to bring some of these legislators into the classroom. And that letter from Dan Kellen also really uh,
Inspired you?
inspired me as well. Yeah, because I just feel like if they had any idea, and yes, we write letters to the legislators, but to really understand what we're actually doing in the classroom. And then I keep thinking about these resources that we have, these videos that we have from the DOE. There was one from a residency I did some years ago. And there are, quite a few of those that are a way for people to have an opportunity, these legislators, to see, what are they doing in the classroom and why is it important, whether they can actually physically get in there to the classroom or not. But anyway, I'm a teaching artist, so that's my focus.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
That's
it's really,
powerful
it's
information.
critical what we're doing. And if we have, I've even been thinking about like social media. I'm not a big social media person. I want to be more of a social media person, so I'm learning.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking about, oh my gosh, some of these things that could be like maybe whether on Instagram or whatever, maybe I can have a section for advocacy, and I don't know what's appropriate to have links for, like, is it appropriate to have a link to some of these DOE videos, of the Artisan
Mm-hmm.
Schools program? I don't know, but that's a question I had, because if it is okay, I would absolutely
Mm-hmm.
put those in. And, just thinking that there's way for all of us individually, and then, connecting to the hub.
Exactly.
Maybe that's something we can do. So that is a question I have. Is it appropriate? I don't know,
It is appropriate
okay.
and so highly encouraged. That's the kind of stuff that when Gay's writing testimony, she's like, I wish I had something like that to connect to. And so if you all are coming through with that type of content that legislators can touch, feel, see, absent being actually with you in the classroom, they can actually see the work that you're doing
Mhm.
by video. It's so compelling. It takes Gay's testimony far and ahead to
Mhm.
be
Okay.
complemented with the work that you're doing in the classroom. So
And I
please.
was just thinking also of a couple of Diginars. We all through Dan Kellen and the uh, I'm blanking out. Honolulu Theater for Youth.
Mhm.
So yeah, he had helped fund some collaborations between teachers and teaching artists. And so, the last time I did that, there were 2 Diginars that were created, and I just was looking at them again the other day going, these are great. These are so great. And they're, 5 minutes long, and wouldn't it be nice? And again, I think the in terms of being appropriate, I would like to share these in social media, but I don't know if that's appropriate. Sharing them with Gay feels like a whole other thing.
Mm.
So, but having people, the public, be able to see the things, but there are going to be
Mhm.
children, in these
Mhm.
classrooms are being seen, and that's where, so that
Mhm.
I don't know what's okay and what's not, but certainly I can, share, and I mean, Dan Kellen, he's got a whole collection of these Diginars that were
Mhm.
created that are just beautiful. So at any rate, I'm
That
happy to
sounds like a
share
gold
anything.
mine.
It's like we've got it,
Yeah,
can we use it?
That's
yeah, absolutely. Gay can follow up. I know Mamiko has a question or has her hand raised.
yes, she does.
Thank you.
Hi
Hi.
there.
So I'm Mamiko Carroll. I'm from the State Foundation on Culture and the Arts, our Public Information Program Specialist. And Beth, I have answers for you.
Yay.
Yes, you can absolutely link to the videos that were done by the DOE. The DOE communications team put those together to be available to the public. And that's something that I do want to affirm here. If it's produced by the SFCA, if it's produced by the Department of Education, we have created public government records that are accessible to everyone and that can be shared. I've put my direct email and the general SFCA email in the link so that you can reach out to me directly. I can give you links to those videos. I can give you some information on how to share them. And I'm also going to say that social media is a tool that can be useful. It gets less and less useful over time. However, we're now in a time where posting it to social media does not mean that people are going to see it if you are not actively paying for it to be seen. I will tell you that for State Foundation, we have reevaluated where we're putting our advertising dollars, and that's been part of what we've had in mind. Those direct relationships with the legislators, absolutely invite them to whatever is appropriate. We do have teachers who have successfully been able to invite legislators to, for example, a display of the artwork that the school does at the end of the school year. If there's a family day, a parent teacher day, or other open public event like that, invite those legislators, get the names of their office managers, contact me, I can help you with that, and reach out to them. Because yes, you do send the letters, they may or may not read them. They may or may not remember them. But if you can follow up and have some kind of contact, some kind of example of here's the work that they did, and an understanding of what your legislators are concerned with. One of the Artists in the Schools things that I've been looking at are the reports. And I'm pulling out and highlighting specific concerns that are being addressed. School attendance. We have testimony from teachers and principals saying attendance rates go way up when it's the arts classes happening. Is it paying attention in class and retaining information? We've got testimony on that. There's all of this information that's in those reports, which are, again, public government records. But I understand that finding that information and finding ways to share it can be more challenging. And that's why I've made sure that my contact information is there in the chat. And I've also provided a few links to some of the creative economy information that came up earlier. We are a government agency. We work for you, the public. Please reach out to us. A lot of people get caught up in the idea of saying, oh, SFCA or the government should do this or should do that. We answer to you. And if you don't bring it to us, if you don't tell us what your concerns are, if you don't tell us what you want from us, what's the information that you want us to collect and share, it's much more likely to happen when you express that interest and bring it to us and ask us sharp, pointy questions. We need to be able to answer you. We work for you. I will also mention that our general board meeting is coming up on November 21st. That's a Friday. It will be open to the public. You can join via Zoom or you can come in person and you can talk to some of our board commission members and ask them questions too and find out how you can learn more and help us do the work that we do and help you in return. I don't want to take up too much more time. So thank you so much. And again, my contact info is right there in the chat if you want to reach out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mamiko. That couldn't be more perfectly orchestrated and timed. So we really appreciate your showing up to share that information and to remind that the State Foundation of Culture and the Arts is here for all of us to ensure we all have the same mission here in the work that we're each doing. So from our corners. I have a little story that might impart how important it is for you artists in the schools to get involved in this process. So I have another client, the Arts Alliance is one client of mine. So I have another client that works in the area of children and family strengthening. And so they have a pretty robust policy team that goes every session and sits with legislators and talks data and wonky public policy issues and can really work their way. They know their way around the Capitol. And lately, they've been bringing a lot of parents who want to get involved in the process. And one particular parent had gone through a myriad of their advocacy training programs and is now on staff with this client of mine. And so she came along for these wonky conversations with legislators. And so you got the policy team and the legislators sitting in the office talking sometimes to each other, sometimes at each other, past each other, dropping all kinds of jargon and policy information that was very technical and sophisticated. And the legislator thought to ask the parent, looked over to the parent and said, well, what do you think? And she said, well, you're talking about the law or the policy, but I will tell you that right now there's a gap in the funding. So right now we go 2 months without it because you and the wonks, you and the policy people have completely missed that families are being dropped, in the support for 2 months. And so it's those details that this parent brought so much credibility, so much legitimacy and reality to the conversation. You can talk policy till the cows come home, but until you have somebody in the room who's actually teaching children, who's actually providing these services, it's not really going to hit home for the public official. So it's so important to include your voices in the process. So hopefully that was an inspiring story to get you all involved. I'll shut up. Are there any other questions? I do see that Cynthia put in a stunning piece of data in the chat around Hawaii's, in this case, our we're not always ranked first. or sometimes we're ranked first in the worst things, but in this case we're ranked first, at least in those that she's polled, the states that she's polled, around the arts legislation, whether good or bad, but at least we're having a conversation there, and that's a really good start. Just thought I'd draw your attention to that. Yeah, Maggie, please go ahead.
I think I just have a couple thoughts and half-formed questions. I've been trying to attend these sometimes mostly off camera because I'm multitasking and some things I've missed. So I wish I had some of it's like I don't know what pieces were shared that I missed. But that this is happening, I really appreciate it. And the pieces that are emailed later so that I can double back later, I greatly appreciate. Sharing this piece about the that the arts and culture is so much in the conversation in our legislature. I love that because I think it's for gathering allies and having them shift to think about things in a way that truly helps the arts, like being able to recognize, like start having a conversation point of like, we love what you've been doing, but we have these pieces, but starting with what's working, and so having that positive rather than beating them for cutting the arts, when they're like, but we've been trying, we thought we were trying. Like I feel like I feel like I've had one piece of a conversation with a legislator where that was like, no, we didn't cut the arts. Like, what are you talking about? It's like, yeah, but my program's not running this year. So building the tools for building those relationships. I love everything that was shared. Thank you for the sharing around how we can better communicate our learning. I feel like that's something that I've learned so much times. I mean, Susanna, like that, you shared that many times in my growth as a teaching artist. How can we communicate our learning? The reality in the middle of running a teaching artist residency is that I'm trying to gather those pieces, but I like having the experience happen in the classroom comes before that, and I'm trying to get the waivers and enough. And I managed to put on an exhibit outside of the time, and I even have somewhere else to exhibit the art. I haven't had a chance to, just because it's too many things. So support for getting that, whether there's certain residencies that are visited by a filmmaker that's been coordinated for us, or it's just different levels of support for helping us gather that evidence and communicate it. And that might just be giving us the tools. It might be supporting after like exhibits and performance after residencies. I don't know. Or it might just be like streamlined checklist for us teaching artists who are trying to do it all. So those are thoughts in my mind. And then I guess the last kind of two questions are anything, bills or specifics, pros or cons that we should have on our radar. And if I have a chance to talk to a legislator, what's the most important thing I should be saying?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I really understand how confusing it might be for you when public officials have a different opinion of how bills went than than deep community might feel, right? And so it's hard for you to sort of stand there and be able to answer those questions. There were some confusing bills last session for sure, very complex bills. So understandable that that was an awkward situation. This session might be also a little confusing just because there's just so much in flux at the federal, state, and county level that bills going forward might still be a little hard to navigate. So, but all the more reason to be involved and to stay tuned to some of the action alerts that the Arts Alliance puts out. I know Gay does her best to put information pieces out fairly quickly to kind of keep everybody moving along at the same pace. Are there any other thoughts, comments, questions, need for clarification from any of the sessions?
And Lisa, while folks are thinking, I just wanted to respond to some of what Maggie mentioned. And two things, Maggie, you were talking about tools, and we wanted to let this group know that we're planning to put together a toolkit that will follow these sessions. It may include things like that sample letter from Dan on an effective way to bring lawmakers out, and other strategies and pieces that you'll be able to maybe tailor for the communities that you're in. I was reminded through these sessions that a lot of times for those of us that are jumping in, maybe for the first time, or we're really getting a sense of how this all works, it's great to start with your local community and your local lawmakers. They are very interested in listening to their constituents. So sometimes, even if the Alliance is sending out some general messaging and positions that we think are important to take in the arts and cultural community, you being a constituent in a particular area has even more power than the Alliance, coming in with a broad message. So the other thing I wanted to mention, Maggie, we are working with a governmental affairs consultant right now who has been doing a deep dive on Act 131. You all might remember this was a really important piece of legislation that we were tracking. And our consultant has been meeting with people, really studying that legislation. And she's working on a series of documents that will bring some clarity about what that legislation does and does not do. We're circulating it right now. We want to make sure that we've connected with State Foundation and with lawmakers. We're really just trying to make sure that we can all agree on the facts of what this new law is all about, what the impacts are now and in the future. So be on the lookout. We're going to be sharing what we found with community. And I think a part of that will also be helping to maybe think about what we can expect or what might be coming in the next legislative session. One example is that Rep. Janae Capella, who chairs an important committee, she's already talking about a cultural trust as an alternate source of funding, of guaranteed funding for arts and culture. And we've already started having some conversation with her to learn more about that. It sounds fantastic. Might be something that we all will want to get behind, especially if we can help to shape that. So just know that more is coming, and where we can help bring clarity to what we're seeing and hearing in the legislature, we definitely want to do that. That's important so that we can take action and feel good about the actions that we take. So thank you for the points you made, Maggie. Really appreciate those.
Thank you
you,
for all
Gail.
that you guys do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
for anybody who is so moved, I guess as we close this 4-part session, are there any ideas that you all might have around your own, any strategies for yourself that you might take for preparing for the legislative session, or even in your own community having, we want to remind advocacy isn't just about the public policy activities that happen at the state capitol, but it can be, good, meaningful conversations in your communities around what you'd like to see happen. So is anybody moved to share what you might be interested, inspired to do next? I know Beth is thinking about how she might invite people to her school. Any other thoughts? Well, certainly not needing to know this all right now. Maggie, did you want to say? Go ahead, please.
I think one of the things that's on my mind, like you got all my thoughts in one thing, but like there's the next grant for us teaching artists that the can't remember the name of it, but around Museum Without Walls, only for health and wellness. And that's in the like conception stage at application stage. And so I'm thinking for my application, how can I design this experience in a way that I am like that gathering of the information is being done as a part of this with the community. I'm like, since it's not a tack it on, but that's a question in my mind right now.
I love that. I love that.
Nice.
Yeah, this dual role that you can play. Wow, I I had no idea I was going to be that cool. But anyway, that's a really great thing to share, Maggie, that you see not only the work that your day job, the things that you love, but you see a simultaneous role of data gathering. It sounds like storytelling, or just being able to be the collector of information to help get the word out, or to help make sense of the information that's being collected from where you sit, to help make sense for others. Yeah, that's great. I think that's super powerful. Thank you. Mamiko?
Just real quick, Maggie, reach out to me. We have contacts at the Department of Health who are also interested in arts and healing and wellness, and they may be able to give you some guidelines and suggestions for the information and how to collect it. Thank you so much for your questions, Maggie. And again, you are so welcome to reach out to me anytime you want to.
Thank you. I noticed, just to draw everyone's attention, that Cynthia was able to share a report on what's happening at all state legislators that they're in their region, exploring the rhetorical shift toward framing the arts as part of the creative economy, as we had discussed earlier. So lots of good nuggets there, I think, that we could look at for modeling it here, the conversation here in Hawaii. Thank you for being able to. Oh, I'm seeing that's my otter that actually grabbed that. That's not Cynthia's. That Cynthia posted the link. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, for the good of the order, we are about finished. Does anyone have anything else they want to share or ask?
I think we're good.
Okay. Oh, did someone want to say something?
No, Lisa, that might have been me. Oh, wait, I just saw Beth's hand go up.
Okay.
Beth, did you want to add something?
Well, in terms of the gathering these videos, et cetera, should I just send the links that I have to you, Gay? Is that where I
Yes,
start? Okay,
that would be great. Yeah, sounds
Okay.
good.
okay.
Gay, did you want to close us out?
Yes, I was just going to give a big mahalo, just a big thank you to you, Lisa, to Cynthia for joining. for all of the guest speakers, and for those of you who've gathered with us today for this important conversation. Thank you for being a part of this. We will send out a survey just to get a little bit of feedback on how we can improve these types of training sessions for you. And again, keep up the great work, keep advocating, keep lifting your voices, and we'll do our part to try to keep you informed and to provide tools and resources to help us all to advocate more and even more effectively for arts and culture across the islands. So thanks again, everyone. Appreciate you. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you. Thanks, Cynthia. All the best.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't know how to turn my otter off, but it actually